Hi, my name is Lisa Smith, Vice President of Youth Development for the YMCA of Central Texas. Today we're going to go over the YMCA's newly adopted abuse prevention policies. These policies are applicable to both volunteers and staff here at the YMCA. It's important that we not only keep our members safe, but all of our youth in the facility. So let's get started.
So let's get started with the different types of abuse. Physical abuse is an injury that is intentionally inflicted upon a youth. Sexual abuse is any contact of a sexual nature that occurs between a youth and an adult or between two youth. This includes any activity which is meant to arouse or gratify the sexual desires of the adult or the other youth. Emotional abuse is mental or emotional injury to a youth that results in an observable and material impairment in the youth's growth, development, or psychological functioning. Neglect is the failure to provide for a youth's basic needs or failure to protect a youth from harm. So the Code of Conduct with the YMCA, our organization's physical contact policy promotes a positive, nurturing environment while protecting youth and staff. Our organization encourages appropriate physical contact with youth and prohibits inappropriate displays of physical contact. Any inappropriate physical contact by staff towards youth in the organization's programs will result in disciplinary action up to and including termination of employment. So we're going to talk about some different forms of appropriate physical contact and inappropriate physical contact. When you're working with youth, sometimes the lines can get a little fuzzy. Is that appropriate? Is it not? So this is to serve as a guide for you. Appropriate physical interactions, side hugs, handshakes, pats on the shoulder, giving kids a high five, holding hands with young children, and maybe if you're escorting them down the hallway. Inappropriate physical interactions, full frontal hugs with children, kisses, showing affection in an isolated area, lap sitting, piggyback rides, wrestling or tickling, allowing youth to cling to an employee's leg. Some of these types of inappropriate physical interactions can sometimes be misconstrued by the child. If you were tickling them, for example, they may understand that, oh, he tried to touch me or she tried to touch me. Lap sitting, same way. It also, from another person's perspective, can sometimes be read the wrong way. So these are appropriate physical interactions and inappropriate physical interactions. Okay, let's talk a little bit about verbal interaction with youth. Appropriate verbal interactions, positive reinforcement and verbal praise, appropriate jokes, encouragement, praising the children for different things. Inappropriate would be name calling, shaming, or belittling a child. Or discussing your personal life, sexual encounters, or involving youth in your personal issues. Very important as we walk through our facilities or we're talking to our coworkers that we don't talk about our personal life because that can often be overheard by children, and that needs to be kept separate. Secrets. We don't want children to have secrets with an adult staff. Derogatory remarks. So these are just some of the verbal interaction that you should be looking at and using appropriate verbal interactions with youth. Again, this is just a guide. The entire policy will go a little bit more in detail in terms of the interactions. So let's move on to one-on-one interaction. This is very important because most abuse occurs when an adult is alone with the youth. Our organization aims to eliminate or reduce these situations and prohibits private one-on-one interactions unless approved in advance by the organization's administration. In those situations where one-on-one interactions are approved, staff and volunteers should observe the following guidelines to manage the risk of abuse or false allegations of abuse. And let me just state here, false allegations of abuse are likely to occur. That's why we want to ensure that we have these guidelines on what is appropriate and inappropriate in regards to physical and verbal interaction. Very important to not only protect you, but to protect the children and youth in our Y. So when meeting with one-on-one in the youth, always do so in a public place where you're in view of others. Avoid physical affection that can be misinterpreted. Limit affection to pats on the shoulder, high fives. We discussed that in the earlier slide. Very important on what's appropriate and inappropriate because it can be misinterpreted. If meeting in a room or office, leave the door open or move to an area that can be easily observed by others passing by. Sometimes we do have to have one-on-one conferences with children or youth, but you want to just make sure that you're in an area and leave that door open where you can easily be observed by other people. Inform other staff and volunteers that you are alone with a youth and ask them to randomly drop in. Document and immediately report any unusual incidents, including disclosures of abuse or maltreatment, behavior problems, how they were handled, injuries, or any interactions that might be misinterpreted. And my thought on this is just to always seek a supervisor. When in doubt, you don't know, maybe something looked odd, this child did something, or just always seek a supervisor and ask their opinion on how you should handle that. Next, electronic communication. This is very important as we live in a digital age, that our electronic communication with youth. So any private electronic communication between staff and youth, including the use of social networking websites like Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, texting, etc., is prohibited. There should be no electronic communication with children in any form. So let's look at the appropriate electronic and the inappropriate electronic communication. So appropriate electronic communication, sending and replying to emails and text messages from youth only when copying in a supervisor or a youth's parent. Communicating through organization group pages on Facebook or other approved public forums. Again, this is public. This is emails where someone else has been in the email and it's just not a conversation between you and the youth. Private profiles for staff and volunteers which youth cannot access. So inappropriate electronic communication. Private messages between staff and volunteers with youth. All of these policies apply to our volunteers just like our staff, as I'd stated before. So no messaging between staff or volunteers with youth. Posting pictures of an organization participants on social media sites. Let's say you are in the classroom or in the gym and you take a picture of children playing basketball or participating. You are, first of all, not allowed to do that, but number two, definitely not allowed to post that picture on a social media site. That is against YMCA's policy. Friending participants on social networking sites. Youth participants in our programs should not be our friends on Facebook. We should not have their personal numbers. Private messages between staff and volunteer with youth. So just make sure that we follow all of these appropriate and inappropriate electronic communication. We live in a day and age to where this is a large form of communication, but it's just very important that we protect ourselves and our youth. Okay, let's look at monitoring and supervision of our facility. Each facility must be monitored, particularly out-of-the-way locations or locations that might permit an offender undue access to or privacy with the youth. Effective supervision and monitoring require that a variety of methods be used frequently at both scheduled and random times. So checking members into the facility. Very important that as all members come in, whether it is through the front entrance or the side entrance of the facility that we are scanning those members in and we know who is in our building. So very important that everyone checks in and out at all points of entry and that there are no unauthorized members or anyone in the facility. General supervision. It's important that as staff, administrators, that we are regularly walking, doing building walkthroughs, checking doors. Are there offices that are left unopened? Is there an area in the back of the building that could pose a risk or a hazard in your area? So it's very important to take a look at your building and your area and think, oh, would this be a area that in question that possibly is not supervised well, where two youth, whether it's consensual or not, is it an area that could provide privacy for those, or privacy possibly for an offender to a teen or another child in the facility? So just always be aware of the environment and areas of improvement that we need to supervise. So monitoring youth in the facility, all youth that come in and that are members, we have parental consent for those. And it's important that any youth under age 12 are not left in the building unsupervised. That's why we have the rule of 12 and under, so we can ensure that their safety. Now, for children over 12, we still need to provide supervision. And sometimes that can be in the form of direct supervision or indirect supervision. We could have authorized areas only to where we know that that area can be maintained. If the whole building is open to youth, it's very difficult to ensure that those areas are safe for everyone unless you have someone in all of those areas monitoring children coming in and out all day. Also, monitoring high-risk activities. We have a lot going on at the Y. Bathroom activities. It's very important that we pay attention to children going in and out of the bathroom. If you have a structured program, whether it be after school, camp, swim team, it's important that we don't allow children to go to the bathroom alone, that we stand in the doorway so we can hear what's going on in the restroom. Locker room activities, the same way. Shower activities, those need to be put on a schedule if there are any opportunities that the showering may need to occur during our program hours. Playground activities, again, supervision is very important when it comes to all of these. On a playground, for example, a staff needs to be able to see the way they're standing and supervising. They need to be able to see what's going on. Let's just pretend that maybe there's a tunnel on the playground and that is not being monitored and supervising. That's just an area for a child to have the opportunity for peer-to-peer abuse, and that's something that we need to supervise and just be aware of. So if you're supervising playground activities, obviously you're going to have some additional training surrounding that, but it's very important that we pay attention to our areas around us so we can supervise them appropriately. Transportation activities, off-site activities, and overnight activities. All high-risk activities that we all do, that we all have, and so very important that we monitor those and we are aware. And again, with these high-risk activities, never be alone one-on-one with a child. There always needs to be two adults present with a child, never one-on-one. And that's to protect yourself as well. Okay, now that we have reviewed the YMCA's abuse prevention policies and procedures, we have reviewed them, highlighted them, kind of pointed out some of the main things that you should be looking for or paying attention to within the organization and what's going on with youth. It's very important that we protect not only our youth, but our children. Unfortunately, abuse and neglect is on the rise, and sometimes that abuse is just an allegation. So it's important that you not only protect yourself, but you protect the youth in our community and in our facility. So in terms of reporting abuse and neglect, each of us has a legal and ethical obligation to recognize and report suspicions of mistreatment and abuse. Any person that suspects abuse or neglect and does not report it can be held liable for a Class A misdemeanor. If you suspect abuse or neglect, call the abuse hotline 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. 1-800-252-5400. These calls are confidential, and I always say, when in doubt, report. You can always ask a supervisor, but if something just doesn't seem quite right to you, I would rather you make that report and cover yourself and possibly protect the child.
If you have any questions about the policies and procedures that were presented here today, please feel free to contact your supervisor. Also, these policies are a guide, an overview that highlight the abuse prevention policies adopted by the YMCA. So please log in to ADP next time you clock in, print those or read through them thoroughly, and sign the last page just stating that you have read and you understand the YMCA's abuse prevention policies. Again, we thank you for helping us keep the children and youth in our facility safe each and every day. Thank you.